Welcome to the Myth of Motherhood, a podcast by, for, and about moms and those who love them. I don't believe in TMI, and this is a 100% judgment-free zone because there is no one right way to be a mother. There is only your right way. I'm your host, Alyssa Alter, a Brooklyn-based mom, women's health expert, and motherhood advocate. Curious to learn more about what I do and why I do it? Visit alyssa-alter.com. All right, let's get this myth-busting party started.
Welcome back. Now, if you've listened to this show before, you know that I don't believe in TMI, and this is a 100% judgment-free zone. You know that I do not hold back. I lay it all out there. Number of times we've talked about my butthole on this show. I mean, countless. I've talked about my divorce in many ways. I've talked about my birth trauma. I've talked about getting married for a second time. I've talked about, the life events that have been the most vulnerable for myself and also with the guests that I bring onto the show and share with you. And all of that to say that today's episode is, for me, the most vulnerable that I've been. As you'll hear in the episode, I'm talking today about my relationship with my own mother, which I don't talk about my parents a ton on the show. And it's not because I'm keeping secrets or hiding, but there have been a lot of things going on that it wasn't time to talk about yet. I often say you can't have perspective on something that you're in the middle of, right? And it is starting to be time to talk about this a little bit more and share. So I also want to give you a heads up that today's episode, while, oh my gosh, filled with so much beauty and love and light, is about losing your mom. And more specifically, something that today's guest and I share is that we started losing our moms while they were still here. I'm using the past tense. Dana's mother did pass away. My mother is alive. And I started losing her about 14 years ago. And it sucks. And she's great. And we will get into that in the episode. And I actually was feeling like it was about, I guess I was feeling that impulse that this is something I wanted to dip my toe into talking about a little bit more, that I was feeling ready. And I reached out to Dana Black on Instagram, as she has a podcast called I Swear on My Mother's Grave, which you might expect to be like a very just like sad show about losing your mother, but it's really a beautiful show about life, about love, about lessons, and really about the experience of being someone's daughter or being someone's child. And so I reached out to her about being a guest on her show. And I was like, my mom is still alive, yet I've had this experience where I've slowly and consistently been losing more and more pieces of her and parts of her and her in my life over a decade plus. And it turns out in us connecting that we're both graduates of Skidmore College, that we know some of the same people. And while she may not know my ex-husband, she knows his a cappella group, right? These small niche things we have in common. And so we decided to, meet on Zoom and connect and see, meet a fellow thoroughbred and also someone who shared this other thing in common. And I am proud to call Dana a friend, and I'm really excited to share her with you today and to share this episode with you. Dana is also an actor. She's a producer. She's a podcast creator and the host of her show, and deeply curious about the human condition and how empathy, listening, and levity can change the world. She started her podcast in her closet next to her Spanx, called, as I mentioned, I Swear on My Mother's Grave, as a way for her to process the loss of her mother with other people dealing with complex emotions around maternal loss. And again, not just in death. She got married last year on the patio of her Nana's nursing home and now lives in Traverse City, Michigan, after over 20 years in Chicago. Something I love about Dana is she too is no stranger to these big transitions in life and the complexity and duality and, all of the seemingly opposing but totally aligned feelings, thoughts, perspectives that come with all of that. And again, this is I'm really excited to share this episode with you, and I'm very nervous, which I say at the beginning to Dana, because this is something that I really haven't shared. I haven't talked about publicly. We barely talk about it within my own family. So I invite you to hold our hands and come on this adventure with us. And I hope that this offers you some comfort and some feeling of community. Because as I found, and what made me start this show and really do everything that I do, and the reason I talk about everything, is because going through these things alone is so much harder than it needs to be. And if we do it together, it's not that it's not hard, it's just less shitty. So with that, join me and Dana Black in today's episode of Myth of Motherhood.
Okay, Dana, I am so excited about this, but like we were just saying, I'm also nervous. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm anxious. It's weird. I'm excited for you. And also
me too.
And also I'm excited for me too, but I was like, I'm excited for you because I think there's some brave shit that might happen, and I think stepping into speaking the words, putting them into the universe, sharing something that you maybe haven't shared with people who love you and support you, which is your amazing audience, as you move through motherhood, grappling with your own maternal issues, move towards motherhood again. I'm excited for you, and I'm so excited that you asked me to be here, but I'm also anxious. I haven't done an interview in 4 months. So I might be like, this show's about my dad. Wait, wrong. Nope, it's not.
Wrong
it's not
parent.
about your dad. Oh, shoot.
Wrong
shit.
parent.
Which one is this about? Who do I lose? Who'd I lose? So I'm a little nervous.
No, it's going to be great. We're going to have so much fun. This is a safe space. And because this just feels like a perfect time to it. In your words, share a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you're bringing with you today.
What you bring with you today here?
What'd you bring in with you today?
God, well, I brought my water. I brought a picture of my mom, because I always put up a picture of my mom when I do interviews, which I will show you.
Show her.
Well, this is my mother. This, and I'm not kidding you. Oh my God, I actually might start crying. I didn't even realize that. I forgot. This is from my last year at Skidmore. Stop. And I just realized that as I held it up. This is from senior year. Sorry, whoa. Alyssa and I went to the same college, but we were different years, and we found that out later through the internet.
Through the internet, yeah.
Yeah, this is from 2001. And my mom and dad came to visit. It was my senior year. And we went to this wine bar. I don't know if you know. It was like a wine bar downtown.
Was it called The Wine Bar?
That's it.
On Broadway? Yeah.
Have you heard of it? It's The Wine Bar.
I've been there.
Yeah. That was, oh my God.
There's a wine bar. The Wine Bar? Yes.
Yeah, it was new.
The hottest spot in town.
It was new
still
for me.
there.
Wow. Mm-hmm. It was new for us. And my parents took out, it's hilarious. Was it the wine bar? My parents took like 12 of my friends out for wine, which was amazing. And I love this picture. I love that we're clearly like, I've had a lot of wine probably. And my mom has probably had some too. But I can tell that my mom was dealing with vertigo and neuropathy and some depression. And I can see like this strained look in her eyes of pain. I can like already see chronic pain and some sadness. And this is right before 9/11. You know, I graduated right before 9/11.
Yeah.
My dad ran a travel company. We didn't live in New York, but obviously I went to school in upstate New York, as did you. So a lot of friends were affected. My dad's business was changed forever in the travel world. He sold this company, and then my parents got divorced. And then the trajectory of my life and my mom's life changed forever because my mom and dad were married for 37 years. And then my mom started dealing with more neuropathy and chronic pain, had a back surgery, dealt with addiction, opioids. This is fun. We're going to have fun.
This is so fun. Did the opioids, was the addiction from like post surgical?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't like she chose, she needed it, right? But
Right.
That's what I mean. It's like, she
also
was at the
like
height
that's
of
addiction. People do not choose to become an addict. It happens out of, there are extenuating, it is, no one chooses that. You end up there.
Yeah. And she's, dealing with addiction. I'm working on language around saying she's an addict, right? That my mom was an addict, that she dealt with addiction. And, but yeah, I was like right at the height of the opioid
you dealt
crisis.
with addiction.
Right. Height of the opioid crisis that she was going through and needing more medication. And anyway, so my mom slowly changed throughout my life and got sicker and more reclusive and bedridden, and her stomach became distended. Like my mom, which is something you and I are going to talk about, or something that I know we have in common is this feeling of losing our moms while they're still here with us on this life, on this earth, this earthly plane. My mom was slowly going. So I feel like I've been mourning her for years before her death. And then jump to, she died in 2016. And then 6 years later, the global pandemic started, and I was stuck in my house, and I'm an actor, and I want to be creative, but I also wanted to start using my voice instead of someone else's voice, like as an actor. And I started a podcast, like like everyone. I was like, oh, the world needs more fucking podcasts. I'll start one. And so I started talking about the loss of my mom with other people who've lost their moms through death or estrangement. And I have a show called I Swear on My Mother's Grave. And it's about coming back to forgiveness for my mom and forgiving myself. And it's about legacy and loss and love and our moms. And it's changed my life. And now I'm here with you. And that's who I am. But that's like a really big bird's eye view. So there you go.
I love it. And it's funny because Dana, as we this is a newer friendship, but
yes,
when we first connected, we realized there was so much overlap in so many different areas of our lives. As our friendship grows, I realized there's just even more and more overlap because Dana and I had a conversation the other day before recording this where Dana very lovingly was like, Alyssa, what are you comfortable with? Because as she mentioned, like something I've talked about a lot of things about motherhood, from my, yelling at my husband, like I'm a mom, but I'm not your mom. Lots of details about my butthole, really like deeply intimate things across the board. What things about my divorce from my first husband taught me or prepared me to deal with in motherhood, but something I don't talk about or I have not, it wasn't a choice. Oh, I don't talk about this. I haven't talked about is my relationship with my mother, is, with my parents. And that's what we're diving into that today. And, I started this podcast I guess it launched in 2021 because I was like, oh my God, I started this in 2020. I started like planning for it in 2020. But what I realized from our conversation the other day, and then obviously talked about with my therapist that night, to get a head start on today, because I'm not
so you hung up with me, and then you were like beep bopple beep, like speed
emergency.
Yeah, to your therapist.
No.
Great.
No, I already had her that night, and I was like, this feels like that makes sense.
Yeah.
that, you know, and I've talked about this a lot too, that, you know, there was a lot of grieving after I had Everett. Grief for the birth experience I thought I would have, grief for the postpartum experience I thought I would have. Then lockdown happened, so grief for what the first year would look like. And what I've realized is that also a large part of that grief was also, I had been able to rationalize away the lack of presence my mom has had in my life, like in mothering as an adult, for other reasons that are real. Yet that doesn't change that I then had a baby and my mom was not there for me, right? Like I've spoken to women who part of their trauma from having a baby during COVID is that their mother wasn't able to be in the delivery room with them. Who would want to go through this kind of thing without their mother? And when I first heard that, I mean, I was shattered because that never crossed. Why would my mom be there? She wouldn't. Why would she be there? Because how would that help me? And it made me realize, I was like, oh, that's because this isn't. My mom is still alive, but I lost my mom about 14 years ago when my godmother passed away, and my mom's grief really, I mean, it's also like a deep depression that never stopped, but that deep depression also, you know, did it hide? Did it mask? Was it a name for something that could then leave what really needed to be named unnamed for a long time? But really what happened was, over those years, her multiple sclerosis advanced into cognitive decline. So the lack of interest in my life, you know, at first I was like, well, she's depressed. Like, I get it. But then things started changing, and then I was like, I guess she's just a bitch because she doesn't give a fuck about me.
How does it feel to say your mom's? How does it feel to say your mom's a bitch? It's intense, right? Like
it's intense when it's just like, and you say it, and you're like, whoa, that's just a true thing, you know?
Right.
But it also was like, that's how it felt. I was like, you don't care, like you don't care about what's happening. And what
was your godmother her good friend? I meant to ask.
Oh my God, like childhood best friend, sister, like I mean, emotionally the closest person to her. So this was devastating, and I understood my whole family. We all felt that.
Was she maternal to you, the godmother? Was she also maternal to you? I mean, she was called your godmother, but that can just be a title.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
I think when I was little, much more so, we spent a lot more time together. But then as we got older, you know, but yeah, I mean, she was definitely super present in our lives. And so I think for just many years, we all just kind of were like, Mom never kind of came back from that. But then it was, and I mean, I'm like realizing it now in hindsight that like, part of my postpartum experience, the grieving part, the really hard, deep parts, which I've talked about, like feeling alone, feeling like no one understood, like no one saw. And there is truth to that in regards to my birth injury. And I think I've always just thought that was really the thing. But I realize now that part of that also was like,
yeah.
it's the home where my mom was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, that is what's hard to say. And I know, and it's, you know, and it's also interesting to look back and say, like, listen, my mom's been kind of bitchy for a lot of years. And And now
I wanted to make a
butt.
I wanted to make a butthole joke so bad.
Do it. You can.
It's that right. Which hole is she filling? It was just such a beautiful moment. But I was like, oh, who's gonna break it? It's gonna be me.
I can't believe I missed.
I'm gonna hold space.
I know. I'm busy crying.
I know. You're busy crying. I'm holding space. I'll do it for her. I'll do it for the audience wants it.
We have to give the audience what they came for, what they want, what they need.
Do you think though maybe subconsciously, right? Like I've never been pregnant. I've never had children. I won't have children. I won't have biological children. I'm about to become a big brother, big sister in Michigan. Okay, go me. But like, I get to give that
Which
kid
is super
back.
exciting and super awesome.
Amazing. I hang out with him. We go to like a butterfly farm and eat cherries, and I return the kid. It's gonna be great. But like, I've never had children, so I don't know. But I assume there's no way you had to compartmentalize the feeling, right?
Yeah.
Of your mom who's here. She's down the road or whatever. Like she lives on this earth, and she still can't be there for you when other people's moms are there and buying them gifts and whatever, like helping them.
Oh my God, yeah, helping,
so
doing.
It makes
stuff.
sense that you pushed that away. You probably had to, but now that it's coming up for this second birth,
there's finally
like?
this. There's finally the space for it.
Right.
Yeah. No, and it's I think that's also what I talked about with my therapist is that I was like, oh, and that's why this is coming up now. Like, I get it. I get, and it's interesting. Something came up recently, but I'm realizing as I'm saying that, I think it's a post you shared.
Oh,
on maybe about like, not, what's the word? Shaming your past self, not like having a lot of understanding for like your past self and having the information that you had or, like.
That might have been Simone. That feels like a Simone thing.
Oh, Simone
like
Grace.
you told me about.
God, isn't she just?
Yes, I think she
talked
talked
about following Simone Grace Soul. I mean, she coaches on marketing, but really she's like just making the world a better place and helping everyone be better humans. Her stuff is incredible. Follow her.
I love her her newsletters that are like how to get rid of followers fast, and that's her advice. She's like, here's how to get rid of people that are not for you quickly.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing. I love that freedom of like, go, buy, shed them. They're not for you. And so, yeah.
I don't know if it was originally from her. We'll find out, or we won't. But if I find it, I'll put it in the show notes. About just sort of like honoring that, like, what you know when you know it, and that certain things things come up at certain times when you're ready for it, when there's the space for it, and that these coping mechanisms that we have that we're having so many more conversations about now, which is incredible. But it's like, I don't have to never compartmentalize again. Like something for me, like in my anxiety, I dissociate. And like, I used to do it a lot, which is like was not great for me, right? Because it kept me from being present in my life. But also, like, I understand why that happens. Like, that happens to protect me. Like that, these things that we do, we compartmentalize. They're there for protection. They serve a purpose. And it's then becoming present enough to be like, oh, this is happening. I'll need to revisit this. Like, why is this happening right now? And what do I need to do about it? Rather than, oh, I was just like running away for many years. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, no, it wasn't time yet. And like, that was too much. We can't do everything all at once.
No.
So that I feel like there's like finally the space to do it. And also before I have this other kid who's like gonna, my life's gonna explode again. And like, a whole new world of shit is gonna open up. So it's also like, we gotta deal with what's here right now because there's more shit coming.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you also, did you, with you, like you, and I love this, that you're not going to have children. Is that something you've always known about yourself? Is that?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I never really pictured myself barefoot and pregnant. I mean, barefoot for sure, but not and pregnant. Yeah.
In the kitchen?
Yeah, in the kitchen. No, I don't even know how to cook. My husband does all the cooking. But I also wasn't sure I wanted to be married. And I went through, marriage counseling with my current husband during the pandemic, and now I'm married. So we all come to, we think we don't want something and then our lives change. But obviously becoming a mother biologically is a little harder. The time has passed, I think, for me. And also I just don't think I want to. I don't know. I feel like we're thought of as so selfish. And yet I think it's the most honest, less selfless thing to say to the world. It's not me. I won't be doing that. It's better for me to make that decision for what I know that I want, how I want to move through the world. And I know it seems like we're cold and callous, like you don't want kids, but it has nothing to do with that. It's about, I just think I don't have the bandwidth and I want to travel and I don't want my freedom. It is true that I guess that is the selfishness of it, but I want to be able to dictate my life the way that, I worry about regret. My grandma's always like, you're going to regret it. You're going to regret it. She's 96. And she's like, who's going to take care of you? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, it's not a given that I was going to take care of my mom. And she hired someone to help her because we would have destroyed each other. So a given of me moving home to stay with my mom and live with her as she ended this life at 67 years old wasn't a given. And I visited her and I did the best I could, but I wasn't qualified to do that. And our relationship was not at the place where we could have been doing that. Anyway, I'm spiraling, but no kids. Anyway.
No. And that's, I hear everything you're saying because that's also like, explicitly, implicitly, insidiously everywhere. This is the message that we get, right? That like, especially because like, oh, you're a woman and you have a uterus. So your purpose here is to bear children and you're going to regret it because you're never going to fill your life's like there's all this and it's selfish and because what we're supposed to be selfless. You could argue, I bet if we had a conversation with my husband and probably our accountant, I'm selfish because I wanted another one.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? Like, isn't that selfish? If we look at the world and sustainability, isn't that really freaking selfish on my part? I'm going to have 2 kids to put more demands on an overly taxed all sorts of systems.
Right.
Like the argument doesn't check out, but that is what that's the truth that's out, out there, and I think it is so like, I just love when someone knows what's right for them.
Yeah. I mean, but it's also like, who knows, right? I got pregnant at 21 and I didn't have that child because I was dating like a bipolar poet, who like worked at a restaurant and, I was serving at Debevix in Chicago. Like I could not have a kid. I lost my wallet every 20 minutes. You know what I mean? Yeah. I left it in cabs. Yeah, I shouldn't be having a kid. And so I obviously did not have that kid. And it's funny, again, this was like, I was 4 weeks pregnant. And I believe in pro-choice and all that and blah, blah. My mom was a biology teacher. And I called my mom right away and was like, what should I do? And she just told me it's a cluster of cells and you'll be back at work in probably 48 hours. And I was. And she was so calming and reassuring. And some people are like, oh, do you ever think about that kid, right? I'm sure a lot of people have these kind of thoughts or, and now that kid would be 20 or whatever. And I never do that. I never I think about how my life would be potentially drastically different, or would I be married to that guy? Would we be divorced? Would we have even ever gotten married? Would we have just raised this kid together? The point is, like, I don't regret that, obviously, and I don't pine for that. And yet it proved that I could get pregnant. Well, I wasn't using protection, so that's on me. But like, I was like, oh, well, I got pregnant. Like that could have happened in my early 20s, yay, which again is a privilege. So, we know that's not for everybody, right? Yeah. So, but then I never wanted kids. I never wanted to actively try, But I know it took my mom a long time to have me. So that took her until her like late 20s. What about your mom? Have you ever asked her about you and your brother, like how, her pregnancy journey, her, fertility journey?
As far as I know, she didn't have any problems getting pregnant with my brother. Although what I will say, which was, I think, a very welcome thing, which I think across the board, anyone who's trying to get pregnant, that's always welcome.
Right.
I know when we started trying with Everett, I immediately just, the first month I got my period, I just cried my eyes out because I'd been on birth control my whole life. That getting my period meant I don't know if I can. It wasn't a statement either way, so I had no information.
Right.
It was really scary because I was like, I don't even know if I can get pregnant. But, and this was, my brother was born in 1980 and my mom was 34 when she had him. So she was old for the time.
Yeah,
now that's fine. That's how old I was when I had Everett. Most of my friends were, and then I know that she went to a fertility doctor to see about getting pregnant with me, but then got pregnant.
Oh, right after right after the clinic? Or you mean she went there
there never was. I think she went for a consultation to see if they needed to do some testing if there would be an issue, but then she ended up getting
testing of your
pregnant.
dad, because it could be it's not just her, right? Like which partner is.
Although probably at that time, in the early 80s, they were probably only testing the women. I don't know.
Sure,
I don't know.
Sure. For sure,
because it would 100% be her fault.
For sure.
But as far as I know, she didn't have any, there was no reason for me to be concerned, but I was very, very nervous because because also I knew I wanted kids. I knew that for a fact. I wanted them. My body wanted them.
Oh, how does it feel in your body? What does that feel like?
It's just it's insane for me. I mean, I don't know if it feels this way for everyone. I remember saying to Jeremy, and I know this could sound real weird, okay? But stick with me. It was like when I would see a baby, I my whole body, every cell in my body was like, I should go have sex with Jeremy now. Not that the baby didn't turn me on. I was not turned on by babies, right? I want that distinction to be very clear.
Yeah.
Because that's bad.
Yeah.
That's problematic
right.
for many reasons. But
that's a different podcast. Yeah.
That's a different show.
A different show.
That's I mean, maybe should I bring this up with my therapist? No, this was just, it was like my body's response was go get pregnant, go do that. And it really was. And it's funny to me because I even felt that way getting pregnant the second time, knowing that I feel like complete shit during pregnancy, especially the first trimester. I mean, I'm still on nausea medication. It's not good.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the best. At the same time, it's all I want. And Jeremy was like, why do you want that again? And I'm like, I don't know.
I crave it.
I can't wait.
And I know right now, if we were in a different world and I wish we could call your mom and, in a different lifetime, right? And ask her what it felt like in her body, did your mom also crave? Okay, I'm getting. Did she want to devour your dad? Or did she I don't know. Now I'm making you think about your parents having sex.
Yeah.
I'll do it for you. I'm a freak, but that feeling. There's so many things I wish I could ask my mom, and she's not here. But even when she was here, I was like, oh, it's not the time. She's probably high on hydrocodone or whatever. But that feeling you wish you could, but someone with dementia and MS, you can't. But I'm so curious what she would say, why she wanted them, and also how it felt in her body. Or maybe not. Maybe she didn't crave it that way. you know?
Yeah,
So
I don't
interesting.
know. I don't know, because something that I have spoken about with my mom is the feeling, or just sort of the climate of, you know, there was a lot of this is what you do.
Yeah.
You know, so I do know
an obligation. She felt this was her duty.
I don't even know if it made it to obligation.
Okay.
It was just like you get married, you buy a house, you have the babies,
right?
You do the thing. You know, we never got a dog, but like that could have been on the list. But I do know something that was very, very important to my mom, because she was raised by a single mother in the I guess by the time her dad left, like the 50s or something, like in Jersey City, was my mom stayed home with us. She didn't work because her mom was never around, because her mom had to work. She didn't have that option to be home.
And so your mom wanted to be home for you guys, you mean, when she was
home.
parenting.
And she has talked about how much she loved that. How much she loved that she just got to be there, and the ridiculous things, like the time she talks about the time that my brother like used markers and wrote all over the walls.
Sure.
And she's like, you know, like even she was like, you guys were the best. Like even when you were like being bad, like Brad drew all over the walls. She's like, he wasn't being bad. Like he had markers and this was a blank canvas. Like he was like this, he wasn't trying. He was, this made sense. And she's like, and then I had to clean it up. It was, you know, very funny.
Do you remember a time with her? Do you have a moment that you remember from your childhood that you did with just her?
I mean, we used to go, I feel like my memories of that were like, we used to go shopping.
Oh.
Like for back to school.
Yeah, clothes.
Yeah,
same.
for clothes.
Nordstrom, whatever, a little TJ Maxx. Yeah. I did a fashion show once at Nordstrom as a 12-year-old. And my mom was like in the audience.
Yes.
Yeah. So fun. Yeah. Yeah. Those are good memories.
So fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something. Or when you think of that, do you have a moment? Is it shopping with your mom also? Or do you have like another thing that was?
Oh, that we do? That was something I loved doing with her, like shopping, of course, totally. Going back to school. School supplies was big. I went to the pool with my mom a lot. This place called Northside Pool in Wheaton, and I loved that. I love like the deep end, and there was like Oscar the Grouch pictures under the water, and I have a lot of memories of that time, like little boxes of raisins and my mom, and now I have like some of her like swimsuit cover-ups, and I wear those now that were hers. I mean, like they're loose, people. It's not like, you know, size 6. They're loose. They're flowy. But like, yeah, they're from like the 70s, awesome. And they're so beautiful. But yeah, my mom was not a stay-at-home mom, but she was, you know, around a lot because she was a teacher, so she could be, you know, off in the summers and stuff like that. But yeah, I love that.
Yeah, something that you and I talked about, and I feel like we've already kind of spoken to this, and I want to like more explicitly touch on it, is like, I mean, the name of the show is Myth of Motherhood, right? And it's like, I also didn't know about you, Dana, that you were pregnant at 21, that that is part of your story too, you know, and that everything around becoming a mom, having a mom, you know,
talking about moms, Mother's Day, moms, weddings, kids,
any of this, right? Like that the expectations of these relationships are so romanticized. I almost said Disneyfied, but I think that's because in my show, We Party, I like compare it to a lot of Disney fairy tales. So that's just like top of mind for me. But it really is romanticized. And that, you know, for my first wedding, I had like these romantic ideas of like my mom zipping up my wedding dress and putting my veil on. And like my mom, I don't know where she was. I think she was getting dressed in the other room. Like my best friend did it. Like my mom wasn't around. Granted, my wedding was like a week and a half after my godmother died. So like she was, but I cried about it on that day. And then when I married Jeremy, my mom had nothing to do with the planning. I planned the whole thing. I went shopping by myself, and actually my friend and client worked across the street. I was like, I'm going to Bergdorf Goodman. And she was like, my office is across the street. I was like, do you want to help me pick out a wedding costume? And like, she came over. My mom, my wedding costume.
Did your mom offer? Did your mom ask questions? No. Did your mom engage? No, and there was no guilt, and there was no engagement.
No,
either,
and it was just very like, you're so on top of it, Alyssa.
You've got it. Yeah,
you've got it. And I'm like, well, yeah, because if I don't, no one does. Like, I don't have a choice.
So your first marriage, she wasn't dealing with dementia per se. She was dealing with depression and MS and the struggles of muscular, right? Like, mostly MS.
Which and also then, we have talked about that. I did not know my mom had MS until my brother and I found out when I was closer to 30. I think I was 27, 28. We found out and then notified my parents that we knew. So I didn't even know about that. I thought it was just the grief over losing my godmother. So...
And that feels like a betrayal then. That feels like a betrayal.
Well, yeah, duh.
Yeah, right. It feels like you've been lied to. Like you articulated. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What does that feel like to you?
Well, I mean, and maybe this is an incomplete or narrow-minded view of it, but to me, like a lie by omission is still a lie, which there's a lot of gray area between a lie by omission, privacy, boundaries, all of that I know, and since we've had conversations about it, and I understand this, that like growing up, they didn't tell us because they didn't want us to think our mom was sick.
Right.
They were protecting us. And then as we got older, it got harder and harder to bring it up because I think to them, they started feeling that betrayal aspect. And my mom even said when we found out and told her, she was like, thank God, I thought you guys would be so mad at me for not telling you. I never knew how to say it. And I totally understand that, but that doesn't make it not fucked up. Which also, if you look at me now, I talk about everything. And I feel like that's part of the reason.
Right. And maybe she didn't know how to acknowledge it. I mean, is it a form of denial?
Herself,
like if you don't look, right, if you don't look right at it.
100%.
Yeah. Did she feel like... I mean, what did your mom say? Was she apologetic in terms of, copping too? Like, this is on me, I'm sorry. Or was she like the victim? I mean, it sounds like she was saying, I'm so glad you're not so upset, but you are upset. Like this was a big thing in your life when you found out at 30. But was she,
I don't know that she was really either. She was just very like, any questions you have now, I will answer. Whatever you want to know, I'll tell
open.
You. Yeah. I mean, in theory, open. Yeah. In practice, she is the same person that she has always been.
Yeah.
Which she would say is very private. And I would look at it as, denial, and which I also like. I can't judge that. Like, that's a very personal thing, and it is not my place to force acceptance on. You know what I mean? Like, you got to meet people where they're at. But it also complicates things, as things continue to progress. And, I've tried to have conversations with my mom, this might get, this might get worse. Like, is there anything you want or don't want? And she'll just be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Well, I'm talking about the dementia. And she's like, see, I don't see it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it makes
but don't people with MS, like I have a cousin who has it and a friend, and you get tired, you can get headaches, there's physical limitations, you need to rest, right? So I'm sure you watched that with your mom. Was there times as a kid you were like, oh, she's napping a lot or resting, and whatever, or needing things that because you didn't understand what was going on. So
yeah,
right. I don't know.
I was very critical of it. I thought that I remember one time being like, how come you don't do anything? Like other people's moms like do stuff.
Oh gosh. And then she said what?
And I'm
like, what would she say to that? She was
like, I do stuff. Which she did. I mean, she did do things, but it was but it wasn't a scenario where like, at least that I remember, there wasn't like days she spent in bed or something where like there was any indication of anything. And I don't know if that's because she rested while we were at school or
maybe
she pushed through. I don't know, but there really weren't visible signs that like I missed or something.
But that's the myth of motherhood, like that right there. That you looked at her and you said, why don't you do anything? And she's like, I do things. And yet you had no idea she was struggling because she couldn't tell you. And she's still like, but I'm still your mom. I'm still doing things. I might not be doing what the other moms are doing, but isn't this enough? Like, I mean, my mom napped a lot when I was a kid, and I think it was depression. I think she might have also potentially had a maybe drinking more than I knew. I mean, she didn't. She was a social drinker, and she slept in different rooms, in the house. But she also, so my mom was like depressed. I'm sure of it. And then I just thought she was tired. But my mom was also a critically obsessive, perfectionist woman who wanted to be perfect. So her descent also was about like fall from grace, this like beautiful, healthy CEO's wife, violin player, cheerleading squad, right? All the things. And then looks like Vanna White. And then she gets sick and gets divorced and gets depressed, and not being able to live up to this perfectionist version of herself is also a myth of like, I was the best mother. I was the best this. I was always there for you. And then when she got sicker and our relationship like deteriorated and kind of just went, and it's the way it went. I'm saying like her as a mother, I was like, I think she was still holding herself to these standards of, she can't live up to that. She couldn't be all the things, and she wanted to be all the things. Like my senior year of high school, she quit. She was like, I'm going to quit teaching so I can be there for you all the time. And my dad tells me now that he said that I said to her, Mom, you don't need to do that. Like it's a lot. Like you're making my lunches. You're like being the mom. Like I want to do everything for you in your last year of high school, right? And that I was like, please don't. I'm good. Like you don't need to always be around. And you're great. Thank you. I was very nice. I guess I was great. Yeah. I was harder on my mom later, but I think she wanted to. There was so much perfectionism with my mom that's the myth of motherhood too. I'm just like thinking about all of this. Yeah.
Well, and in what you're saying, we're talking about this sort of like these like romantic ideas of what we all, especially. I mean, listen, I'm not a son, so I can't speak to it, but like the mother-daughter dynamic is a whole thing. So especially in that regard, there's just so many ideas. And I really think that carries over. I mean, I'm slowly experiencing it, piece by piece for a long period of time, just like you. How you have these romantic ideas of what like end of life could look like, or, these different life even just all the life transitions, but especially this transition at the end of life, these romantic ideas and what we see in the movies, and we're going to hold hands and have this, huge heart to heart where everything is reconciled and tied up with a bow, and we understand, and or I don't know, whatever it is in the movies. And it's interesting to hear you say how also just like as things progressed, which makes sense, like it is impossible to hold to be a perfectionist.
Oh, sure.
When this is everything coming undone.
Yeah, and the irony, like on the back of this picture I showed you, my mom had written a note about Skidmore. My mom wrote her name on hammers, cups, plates, belts, like black, her last name. She wrote notes on everything. She wrote notes about the fireplace, like how to use it. She's like, this is off limits. And Joe Black is my mom's name. Joe Black is the only one who can use the fireplace. My mom wrote on everything. And the day my mom died, I was like, oh, she's going to roll over and she's going to write me a fucking note. I know it. And it's going to be like, I'm sorry for everything. I love you so much. I dealt with addiction. It was always I had sadness.
Yeah.
It was about my loss of my sister and my dad. She's going to say, no, my mom just died in her bed. You know what I mean? She didn't write me that note that doesn't exist. She didn't call me. She didn't she loved notes and she loved to write on everything. And I didn't get a final note. And I've never said that out loud, which is crazy. Because that's how this world works. Like you get on a mic with someone and we say something new. But I thought for sure, oh, she knows she must be dying. Like she was anxious that day, I guess. She must know, and this is the moment. And that's not how it works. And sometimes it does. Some people get these beautiful moments, and that's awesome. That's what a luxury too, to know there's something about going and being able to say all the things you want to say. But and
it's, I think again, I don't know, I'm putting these things together as this is happening, where you do hope for that. Yeah. I don't know how you would. I don't know how you wouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe people don't. That's okay. Great.
Right. But even at your wedding, you're whatever. I don't need her. I'm good. I got Bergdorf. I got friends. I can go. Same with me. I was my mom's dead. This is easier. I don't have to worry about my mom. She'd be sick, and I don't have to deal with her. But deep down, I'm this is sad.
Yeah, this sucks.
My mom isn't at my wedding. I can make an episode about it and be funny and cute and charming, but she's still not here. That still sucks, And yet some people don't even have, they have caregivers. They don't even have a maternal, paternal figure. So this illusion of it's one dad, it's one mom, it's this or that.
The whole thing.
I'm still grateful for what I had. And yet it's this monolithic moment where everyone's what's your mom going to wear? What's your mom going to say? Is your mom going to speak at the wedding? What's your mom's name? You get your wedding certificate. What's your mom's name? I'm she's dead, but this is her name. Thank you, county courthouse, right? And they're well, what's her? Where was she born? And I'm literally I forgot. I was I got to look it up. And then you feel like a jerk because you don't remember where your dead mom was born. And anyway, yes. So yes, yeah, it's a lot.
And
it's a lot.
And also we have these dreams and needs and hopes and desires for this. For this thing that we need. And that doesn't change that person is still that person.
No.
I've been lucky more recently. Something that's sort of interesting that I've noticed through my mom's progression is that she has less guards up now because they can't be maintained the same way. So I've actually had some beautiful conversations with her, usually in the morning, because she's better in the morning.
Do you remember one? Could you share something? Do you remember a moment?
Well, one was when she was talking about how much she loved being with Brad and I. And just how much she loved being with us when we were little, because it's so funny. Any memories I have from that time aren't they're not I guess I do have some. I remember getting the flu at one point and my mom playing Scrabble Junior with me, probably 1,000 fucking times. But the clearest part of the memory is her being I have shit to do. I cannot be playing with it. Someone called and I was Mom, come play. And she's I've been playing. I actually have to take this phone call and I have to make dinner.
And your brother's drawing all over the walls. I have to go.
And meanwhile, she doesn't want to play with it. It's I remember that part really vividly too. But when I also think about it, I'm I'm pretty sure she played Shoots and Ladders or Scrabble with me all day.
Yeah. Well, your dad, because your dad was an Army person, right? Army guy. So he's off.
He was in the Navy before they were married. He's an attorney, but got it. Sort of different, but same.
But he's also busy. Yeah. He's off.
It was very much that traditional dynamic. My dad, and that was an agreement they made. Yeah. That is what they did and were going to do and set out to do, and they were outrageously successful at that. And it is true. My mom was always there. If we were sick, my mom was there. If we, she picked us up. She dropped us off.
When she says she remembers those good memories, then do you even if you're like, I don't know, I can't think of what she's remembering right now. Do you still take it in, or do you? Yes, you take it in. You don't question it. It's like, let mom roll. Yeah, let her say.
Yeah, and I think it's also this all like there's not just two sides. There's like 87 sides infinite sides to this, where there's the side where, like, as an adult who has become a mom, who's about to have another kid and have another mom. And yes, my mom is alive, but I'm doing it without a mom of my own. That feels really shitty. There's this other part that also really deeply understands, like, what my mom is bringing to the table, like who she is and how she operates and why. And a full understanding that every single thing both of my parents have ever done is 100% for us. And in a lot of areas it falls short. And that's not their fault. That's not my fault. I think some of that is unavoidable. And I talk about a lot, like, I'm just determined to fuck up Everett differently. Like, I don't think I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to do it different. But also, and I think that's something like bringing into this sort of end of life is that my parents aren't going to magically show up as different people. They're not going to morph into what I would do or what I need, or, they're not. And that's, I mean, it's not feasible. It's not realistic, and it's not really fair. Which is also like, none of this shit is fair. Right? Like, but none of it is.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about, before this call, like, we talked about that. What sometimes it does, though, happen where with dementia, right? People kind of come back to this. There's like an innocence, right? And this stripped away of all, right? Like you said, boundaries, or this pretense of, because they are a different, there's a different relationship that begins because you're kind of beginning again. So I'm curious how that will evolve as her memory evolves. And I don't know what type of dementia she has, but who knows what that will look like.
Yeah. No, and I've seen some of that. There is definitely a softening, and there's also there's a similar, like, I mean, they say, like, it's like the circle of life. Like, as you get older, you sort of like,
become
there's certain childlike, baby-like things that come into it. And in this sense, it's true where, like, spending time with my 3-year-old is such an exercise in being in this moment.
Present.
Right? Like, he lives right now. And so does my mom, because she can't, remember. Her short-term memory is, it's not even trash. I don't even know. It's not here anymore.
Do they have a relationship? I've been meaning to ask you that, like, during this call. How do you talk about your mom to him, or do they have a relationship?
COVID complicated that. We didn't see them a lot during COVID. Because I was really nervous, and physical distance was part of it. But yeah, Everett doesn't know anything because it doesn't come up. Like, he's not aware of any of it. And when she does, like, when she is with him and plays with him, again, they're both really present. So works out.
Yeah. So she sees him. She did now. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Good. Yeah. And
See, right there, I went good.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's good. Like the assumption of, well, maybe it's not, like, you know what I mean? That's what I mean. That like, that's it. Good. Yes, I'm glad they have that so that they can have that relationship. When yet, well, if your mom wasn't healthy or safe, you wouldn't be like, good, yes, get them together.
Right. Well, and what's,
or like, oh, good, you get along with your mom. That's good. Because it's uncomfortable to say, like, we don't get along, or she's a bitch, or I don't want my child to see her, or I'm nervous around her. And right there, I'm like, oh, good. Glad that, right? that that fits nicely. It's like, oh, good. They get to be together.
Well, and I think it's also an interesting thing because it's like, oh, good. So that, I guess really it's like so that I have the memory of it. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm fine. I think I'm fine. I don't think I have a position on that. And what's interesting is that, like, I mean, I'm curious to see how you never know how these things will progress, but it's like if neither of them are really going to remember it.
Yeah.
What is it? Is that so dark?
No, I mean, kind of, but I mean, but why do you have to know? I had a friend recently who lost her mom say, like, she said something like, I haven't cried yet. They were close, but it was complicated, but she's like, I haven't cried yet, but I do know that I now believe that, I don't know what the point is anymore. And I was like, whoa, like, how do you pick that up? Like, the nothingness of that was so big for her that she couldn't even cry, and that nothing matters. And she has a child. Of course things matter, and a career and a life. But there was this, right? So saying, like, what's the point? Who's it for? We don't know. And but it's happening, and it's like, it's for something. It's some energy is happening. And who knows if Everett in 20 years will be like, what I loved was, right?
Who knows?
Or it opens something inside you while you're pregnant with your next child, watching your mom and your son.
There's
I don't know.
nothing bad to it, but it is sometimes like, I don't know. And maybe time will tell, or maybe it won't. And maybe it's just what it is. I mean, the one thing I know that, like, is I think is really nice is, like, Everett has 4 grandparents who love him.
That's amazing.
And
that's
so
amazing.
Even if it's just that he has these experiences where he gets to be loved by all of them.
That's
what the purpose is.
4?
Right?
All 4 are alive?
All 4 grandparents. Yep.
That is unreal. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Right? And so even if he never remembers any of them, he will.
Yeah.
But maybe he won't. I don't know. I don't know. That's certainly having an effect. That's certainly infusing something,
Yeah. How do you mother yourself? You. Ugh.
I know.
How do you do it? Or how are you thinking about doing it in this new birth? Like, when you talk about, like, acknowledging she's not going to be there, now you know it, and you know that, like, this was a thing that hurt. Like, how are you going to mother yourself maybe through this birth? Or what you tell me what that means to you.
That is so just on point, because I feel like in that conversation with my therapist, it's like, I feel like that's almost like why this is coming. Like, that's part of this timing is also to, like, I'm very committed to, like, this next birth is just, it's going to be different than the first one. We're doing different things. We're making different mistakes. This is also how I approach my marriage to Jeremy. I'm just doing not that shit. I'm making different mistakes this time. I'm going to make different, better mistakes.
Yes. And some things you can control, like, some things you can't, right? Like, as we know, with birth 100%. And relationships and da-da-da-da. Yeah.
So I am scheduling a C-section, which is the healthiest for me across all of the boards. I have a whole episode about it. Because it's a big deal. And we got a night nurse. And I think...
Are you a doula person?
I am a doula person, But the hospital won't allow a doula in for a C-section anyway.
Okay.
So then when I spoke to both my OB and a friend who is a doula and was like, what do you think? And the OB was like, they can be in your room with you. They will not be able to be there with you during the event. If that is, they can, whatever. And I spoke to my doula friend who was like, I think you'll be, she was like, I don't think you need it.
Oh, okay.
For that. But I am considering a postpartum doula.
Okay.
To also have that. And I think one of the biggest things that I did was, and it's funny, it came up and I was like, oh yeah, I'll just like talk to Jeremy. But then when I actually like really shared with him like all of this, I was like, oh, this is part of it. Because I think I've avoided allowing someone else to take care of me because it'll be not my mom. So if it's just nobody, it's nobody. But so I really opened that up and invited him in and also said, do you think we could ask your parents to come and your mom to be here? Which is still not my mom. But it's good.
And she said yes. His mom.
We haven't called her yet.
Oh, right. Oh my God, you're so pregnant. Wow. I was so caught up. I was like crying over here.
No, we haven't.
But
yeah,
I was like, wait, you're still in the process. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah. It's so profound. It's so true. It's just like any time someone mothered me when my mom was sick or even after her death, older people in my life, mentors, my husband's mother, aunts, uncles. It's lovely. And still like, that ain't it. Like, that's not her, but it's still a gift. It's this wonderful gift. And, yeah. And that's amazing that you have a partner who lets you say that. That's a gift.
Yeah.
And a gift to his mom, Yeah.
How do you mother yourself?
Gin and tonics. It's hard to make jokes about drinking when you're talking about your mom's addiction. No.
Well, listen, hers were mostly opioids. It's different.
Yeah, right. And vodka.
Also, I can't wait to drink again.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure. God. No, I'm actually trying. I'm trying to drink. Now I'm up in cherry country. I live in northern Michigan, so it's like wine, So I'm trying to drink less hard liquor. How do I mother myself? Oh my God. Rest. For me lately, it's been like screaming that I have to lay down, that I have to just close my eyes, that I have to just be still. I'm a very social person, and I have to just shut it all down. I go on a lot of walks too. There's a lot of nature up here, but I reach out to friends for guidance, but yeah, it's rest for me is my big thing. And reading. I love to read. Like that kind of brings me back to my childhood self, I love to read as a kid. So I'm like, but it's hard to focus on reading these days, right? Our brains are like, where's my phone? I gotta swipe.
So wired
this
for
piece
all
of paper. It's like, no, it's a book. Yeah. I'm trying to squeeze the book, It's like, that's not a screen. You're reading.
Why isn't this page swiping?
This is weird. I'm trying to like this section, But
it's interesting because you're saying this around like rest and quiet time. And so much of being like a mom is making sure Everett gets the sleep he needs, that like looking at when his body is overstimulated. And also there are times where like I'm not trying to like trick him and manipulate him, but at the same time, if I were like, we're going to have quiet time now, he'll like lose his fucking shit. But like sort of directing quiet time for him to rest and quiet his body. And it's like part of my job is to create the boundaries around that and protect his energy sort of for him at this point, which is teaching him how, hopefully, the goal being to teach him how to do this and the importance of it. And then your answer to mothering yourself is creating these boundaries around your energy and when your body and your brain needs to quiet down and have that time. And so that's like it's such a beautiful way to mother yourself. And like, I mean, there's no right answer to that, but like, what a bullseye answer.
I could be a parent. Look at this.
But I just,
wow, I could do it. You think I should?
You totally could do it. Of course you could. You could do whatever you want, but that's just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Oh my God. During the pandemic, I can't remember how many times I turned to my husband and I just looked at him and I was like, I love you so much. And I'm so glad we don't have kids. And it's just like the truth. Like, what am I, Chelsea Handler over here? But I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine what they're going through. Like having 4 kids and they're all in different classes and they're online. I watched
Zoom
friends
school?
of mine and I was literally like, I wish I could come over. I wish I could help you. I wish I could take them away. I wish I like want to walk with them, but I can't do anything for these parents because it was COVID, Oh my God. Anyway. So the point is I was like, aren't you thrilled that we didn't do that? Sorry, Myth of Motherhood audience.
No, we talk. I think that's a really but that's also the myth is that like we're supposed to that you're supposed to love it so much. Do this, and you're also supposed to love it, and it's supposed to be completely self-sacrificing, and all of that's a lie.
No,
and like
and maybe there's a part of your mom. It's like when she was like, "You've got this." Those stories of like parents they become grandkid or your moms become like grandparents, and they're kind of like, I don't need to see the kid, or like, you've got it. I'll visit when I visit. And people are like, my mom's supposed to be this amazing grandma. So maybe your mom, I mean, she has medical issues and other things that she's dealing with physically, but maybe she's like, hey, it sounds like you got this wedding. You do you, that's her living her best self. That's totally how. Maybe it's,
Yes.
And
that also is part of
if you're generous,
who she
generous, that's who right. If you're generous back to her, you go, that's who she is. And that's fine. But I don't know if you, though, ever asked. I mean, even now, like, then I'm going to flip it back to you. Like, if you were like, hey, will you be in the room for my birth, or will you be a part of this? I know that she has dementia and there's other stuff going on. But, like, if you don't ask for the thing, or you don't want you might not get the thing. So I'm just curious, like, if you're going to do things differently, I'm just curious now in this next phase of this new birth, this new journey. I don't know. Maybe there's a way to bring her in some way, some generosity. I'm just curious. That's just me throwing it back at you. And you can say,
and I have thought about that, and I think there are appropriate ways.
Right.
There will be certain times like to have her in the room, or like immediately postpartum when I've like had a C-section and I'm like figuring out nursing.
Yes.
That will complicate things. That will not be the time. But after that, I've actually thought about that. And coordinating with some of her friends to like drive her up here once a week to like come see and to help. They'll bring food. They'll bring cookies or whatever it is, but to be a part of it in a way where
she doesn't have to be
together.
She doesn't have to be in the room or part of here, right?
Which
but
also takes like a recognition of what's going on so that we can set ourselves up for success,
right? And don't expect it to be different. I mean, you can expect it to be different, but you're usually going to be disappointed. And obviously, if your mom is on decline, like my mom was definitely, every time I saw her, it was like worse. And I was like, I'd show up and be like, oh, it's going to be different. She's going to, nope. Like, right. You have to kind of like, you gear yourself up, right? And then you just kind of, if you set those expectations or you are just really clear about, what it is, what's your intention? What are you seeking with this relationship in this moment? And how
and really challenging yourself to be, and I guess in this case, my mom can be really my guide in this, but a real exercise in being present in this moment. This isn't about anything else, nothing before or after, but we're here just right now, and we're doing this thing, and this is what this is, and then the next thing will come. and this sort of radical acceptance of the situation, but also of each other, of myself, of her.
Yes.
And there does come a point, I'm sure you had this experience at some point as well, where it's like to expect something different is just so cruel to everyone involved.
Yeah.
Like, it just
fair.
becomes
It's
so
not
painful.
fair. Yeah, it'd be unfair to her, unfair to me. Yeah. I'd be like, oh, it's gonna be so
that's
different.
like, wow, I'm really just torturing us. How could I not do this?
Right.
Again, let's do something else.
Anything else. Yeah. Yeah. Moms. We love them. I was going to read, when you reached out to me, I was going to read it, but then my phone died. But you reached out to me when we first were texting, or when we first were talking on Instagram. And yeah, you said, I love that you were like, I want to tell you this thing. It felt like you were like, I'm going to share this with you. It sounds similar to maybe your story of like losing your mom while she's living. And you were like, and I love what you're doing. Maybe this isn't what you want to talk about, or maybe this isn't the right story, but I feel a connection with you and your show. And I felt like even that message was you. I felt like you were like giving yourself some bravery of like, I'm going to reach out to this random stranger. I'm going to say this really personal thing, even though you're very open.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, and then I was like, wait, you've never talked about this with like a lot with your listeners or at all. And you were like, no. And you were saying you would come on my show. And I was like, sure, you can. But I'm like, okay, or whatever. But wait, hold on. You haven't talked about this with your girl. Let's get on the mic. And then when we got on the mic yesterday or on the phone, I love that you also were like, well, I had suggestions for you. And you were like,
I know.
Is this my podcast or yours? Right. I love that moment. I was like, oh.
I know. I was like, wait, I know.
That was so beautiful. I was like, you tell me.
And
then
you were
like,
so kind. I know, you were so sweet. And but you also said something at some point, I forget what it was, where I was like, that is her saying, I recognize you are processing something right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And you get to have that space.
That's right.
You're like, I'm not going to push you. You can have that. And I was like,
we can talk about whatever you want, but like, don't you think maybe we should, don't you think maybe we could?
So yeah.
But also it's, if you're ready. And I think you were saying like, I'm kind of in this place where it's all opening up for me. Yeah.
Yes. And I think reaching out to you was the first time that I was like, I think
was like
it's
last
time
year.
to bring this more public. Yeah. Like, I think I'm ready to talk about this and this also like in therapy too, like it's now time to look at this a little bit more. This is coming up. And again, that's like, when I said this isn't something like a hard, like I don't talk about this. It's just like, I haven't yet. I haven't been ready yet. I'm like still like, you listening, let me know. Should this have stayed a journal entry, or is this, are we glad that this is public? Do you know what I mean? Because we're exploring that territory where it goes from your journal to the world. To the world. But I think it's really, really freaking important because you have created, you have your podcast, you have retreats around this. We lose our mothers for a variety of reasons. We lose them to death. We lose them to estrangement. We lose them to addiction. We lose them. This loss shows up in a variety of ways, and we're all feeling it and we're all navigating it. And it's like, the whole thing with everything I do too is that we don't have to do this alone.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
And
our parents wished they had podcasts and all these resources. I'm sure, God, what would my mom's life look like if, God. Who knows? She might have still not wanted any of those resources, but there's so much more for her,
Yeah.
And some people say my show is about what it's like to be someone's child. And that's so interesting to me too. I'm like, yes. What is it like to be someone's child? So people listen to learn, like, how will someone speak about me, or like my kids and da-da-da-da-da.
And I think that's also like, you also like, I can't tell my mom's story. I cannot share her experiences, but I can speak to what it is like to be her daughter and to live my life as her daughter.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And you owe it to your kid. I mean, right? I don't know. Again, I don't know much about parenting, but you owe it to your kids, right? Like your son 100%. And your child that's coming to honor yourself. And like you said about your parents, that when you got emotional about, they gave me everything they did was for us, even if they messed it up. And I feel the same. My mom loved me so much.
Yeah.
She just wasn't, she wasn't capable of caring for herself. And she was also really sick physically and emotionally.
100%. And and every shred and drop and piece that was available to give was given.
Yes. And a lot of her rage wasn't about me. It was about her own life.
Her own stuff.
That's not my stuff. When I didn't call her back, it was my stuff. But yeah,
But yeah, I mean, listen, we're all human.
Can I do a final pelvic? Can I do a pelvic question at the end?
Yeah.
Well,
do it.
Is the pelvis is it related to grief? Be real. I know the hips are. Okay. Is the pelvic?
Yeah.
Is the pelvic literally a mother wound is what I'm trying to ask.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say it. Great.
The whole pelvis.
God damn it.
Right. And
I knew
then
it. I knew it.
like your womb.
Right.
Like where we make babies there. So whether or not you're making babies, like that's like a mother center. And then just really any big emotion, and the reason you feel it in your hips is because it's coming from your pelvis.
Okay.
All of that is so deeply connected. And then, if we get sort of woo-woo about it or metaphysical, like it's our root and sacral chakra, which those are our foundation. That's safety, that's security. It's
mine's
all
so
of
tight.
that.
Mine's so tight. Mine's so hurt. Sex hurts. I've been doing a lot of pelvic work, which I want to talk. I would love to do a session with you potentially, but I just think, no wonder there's so closed off, and I can stretch and I can use a wand and I can do all the things. The listeners are like, what's happening? But I think, but it's all related,
no,
right? I was like,
they're primed.
They're in.
To
No,
this.
they're in. They know your
really
material.
Is. And it's also very, very common to, get to a point where you're in a physical practice where you're like, I have to stop. I can't do that. Or you just cry. And you're like, I was focusing on like keeping my hips steady and moving my foot. And now I'm in tears. And it's like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Because
or
we're
like
through.
after an orgasm, which I'm sure you've talked about on your show.
Yes.
Oh my God. If I don't cry after an orgasm, not always. I mean, usually when I'm alone, oh, let her rip. I'm going to cry through this whole thing.
Muscular engagement and a buildup of tension followed by a release.
It's amazing.
It's that release.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that tension, it's all connected. So that's why we try to take deep breaths. Stretch
and I need some
open some of that.
I
got you, Dana.
Yeah,
I got you.
Okay, we should talk. I would pay you for that time. But anyway, on that note.
But Dana, I want to thank you for being here. Both, I value your time and your expertise and all of that. But thank you for really I was going to say making me do this, but that's not what you did.
No.
You opened the door and created and invited me, and for virtually holding my hand to start to talk about this publicly and, bring your insight to my people and everyone, because this is big.
Thank you so much for sharing your precious time with me. I am so happy that you're here. I hope this episode resonated with you and maybe even inspired some insight into the myth of motherhood and how that shows up for you in your life. If you found yourself nodding your head along with this episode thinking, oh my God, did Alyssa read my journal? Or I feel so seen. Or even I'll have what she's having. You can. Check out our incredible community over in the private Facebook group Moms Club and visit me at alyssa-alter.com to download your free guide to the 20 things no one tells you about pregnancy and postpartum. Remember,
There is no one right way to be a mother. There is only your right way. See you next week.